Dragon Age Origins was made during Bioware's peak. Pretty much since then, there have been some games that will satisfy that same itch, whether you're looking for similar combat, awesome companions to get to know, and a medieval fantasy setting. So let's start with the first game I think that you should check out. It only makes sense to start with a game by Obsidian, since Obsidian was known for making sequels to Bioware games for a long time. Tyranny is a game that I see get brought up sometimes, but I still don't think it gets enough attention. If you're looking for a game that does a lot of what Dragon Age Origins did with its own twist, this is the one. It has a very interesting system for the character relationships built on loyalty and fear. Tyranny is all about the choices that you make and how the world reacts to those choices. You can become feared by all. You can choose to win their loyalty. It's up to you to decide your own path. Obviously, it has a different perspective graphically, but it still has a real-time with pause combat system. It still plays really well. It's a very unique game in this style that I'd like to see Obsidian get back to at some point. And you can get it right now on PC. Greedfall 2's entire vision seemed to be, this is our version of Dragon Age Origins, and in my opinion, they actually got it right for the most part. In the early stages of the game, it feels pretty great. There are interesting characters, a story that lets you get invested pretty early, and the combat system actually feels very similar to Dragon Age Origins. So then why is it sitting at mixed on Steam? Well, unfortunately, it seems to suffer from a lot of the problems other games by the development studio Spiders suffers from. They just don't seem to be getting the right budget to finish their games. When I say they got it right for the most part, that isn't a small amount of praise. This game feels like it should have legitimately pushed Spiders into a higher echelon of RPG developers, but the further you get into the game, the more the cracks start to show. I would still say this game is worth getting, especially on sale for any fan of Dragon Age Origins. Just keep in mind that you'll run into bugs at some point, and part of it will feel like they ran out of budget, because that's kind of what happened. You can play Greedfall 2 on PS5, Xbox Series X and S, and PC. Solasta 2 is the second game in the series and seems to be trying to upgrade the story side of things. They've really doubled down on the cinematic storytelling here, which is a nice touch. It has a similar look and feel to something like Dragon Age Origins, but the combat is quite different. It's more of a tactical RPG style that is based on D&D. It also doesn't have the same sort of focus on companions that Dragon Age has, but I still do recommend this game to fans of Origins because it's similar enough that I think that people who liked that game will enjoy this one. And the lack of focus on companions doesn't mean that there aren't any interesting characters in the game. In this case, there are quite a few, but they're NPCs. You don't get to play as them. You have relationships and talk to them outside of the party. Solasta 2 will appeal the most to people that are really into the gameplay side of things, with a lot of good customization, allowing you to play the way you would like, with deep systems to get into. There's some hope that by the end of early access, it'll also have a very solid story, so I guess we'll have to wait and see for that. Solasta 2 is available right now in early access on Steam. A bit of a lesser known game here, Drakensang is a game that takes place in the Dark Eye universe, sort of similar to games based on D&D in that the systems and world are based on a tabletop RPG. Drakensang has two different games, the original game and Drakensang River of Time, which is a prequel to the first set 20 years before the events that take place in that game. Drakensang has a lot to it that I think Dragon Age Origin fans will like. In a setting that feels familiar but new enough to really get invested in, the companions in the games are a bit less of the focus here, but they do have some interesting ones, and people have said the characters in River of Time get a bit more focus than the original game. So if I had to recommend one of them, I'd probably recommend you play Drakensang River of Time if you're a Dragon Age fan, just because the characters are a bit stronger, the systems are a little more polished. The only problem is that both games can have some trouble running on more recent versions of Windows, so good luck. For some people it works, for others it takes some tweaking to get it to work. And for one of the classics that I highly recommend you check out if you haven't, Neverwinter Nights 2. Neverwinter Nights 2 is a classic for a reason. It has so much going for it, a lot of personality, great characters, a fun system of combat. This will feel very familiar to people that love Dragon Age Origins, and hey, it's another game from Obsidian. Neverwinter Nights 2 also has one of the greatest expansions in RPGs in Mask of the Betrayer, some people going as far to say you should play the game just to experience that expansion. Neverwinter Nights 2 did get an enhanced edition relatively recently, and that was a bit of a mixed bag. I did a video about what was added to that on my channel if you're really curious about it. The basics are that it's kind of hard to tell what was enhanced. There are some parts that are better, so it probably still is the best version of the game, as long as you don't experience bugs, which I actually got lucky and didn't have any. Your mileage may vary. You can get Neverwinter Nights 2 on all modern consoles and PC. This one is a bit more of a potential pick in that this is an indie game in early access that could be pretty good and has a decent amount in common with Dragon Age Origins. So far, it has all the basics that you might want. The combat system feels pretty solid. A lot of customization in the various classes that you can play in the game, with a ton of different abilities to get. Everything about the gameplay feels pretty solid. What's missing, at least for now, is the story side of things. At the moment, it's a bit more bare bones, focuses a lot more on mechanics than any sort of narrative. There's some cool ideas here, though, with things like a reactive dialogue system that can change your characters leaning toward order or chaos. There is lore and a world to dig into. I just really hope that at some point during early access, it gets an upgraded main story, because one of the first quests that I encountered in the demo and in early access was kill 50 things, and that's not really enough to get me super invested. In fact, that's like a red flag usually. I would say it still has potential. It's worth checking out. So go check out Elengard Ascension on Steam. The early access is going on right now. And for the bonus games on this one, I'm going to have to give you probably the obvious, because it needs to be said. If you haven't checked out Baldur's Gate 3, you're a Dragon Age Origins fan, you need to go do that. But also you should check out older Bioware games, in particular Jade Empire deserves a bit more love. I played this game when it first came out, absolutely loved it. I remember it having some issues running on modern systems, but there's ways to fix it, and I think this one you should stick to the GOG version. I'm not sure if they ever fixed the Steam version, but that had a lot of problems before. So there you go. 6 games like Dragon Age Origins. If you have any games you think would fit, make sure to tell everyone about them in the comments. As always, this is a collaborative effort, so any extra games for people to check out is always welcome. And for more game suggestions and videos about RPGs of all kinds, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching.